Commerce Podcast. I'm here with Casey. I'm here with Jesse. We're going live to multiple platforms. We're on Twitter Spaces. We're on YouTube. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. I'm in a loop. All right. Real quick, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor before we get started. What's up, everybody? This is John and Casey from ModCom, and I have to show you something. All right. This tool is called Wicked Reports. It's one of the best attribution tools I've ever seen because of this feature called Funnel Vision. It breaks up your ROAS into top, middle, and bottom of funnel. So I'm here in my Facebook ads account and checking out this campaign, V-Day Sale. I'd probably be cutting this thing, right? If I was looking in Ads Manager or if I was looking at first touch attribution, I'd be like, you suck. 0.18 ROAS. You're out. But if I look at it middle funnel, it's like one of the best closers. If I look at it bottom of funnel, it's one of the best closers. So that campaign is closing. I got to keep it running. I got to adjust the targeting in there, and I got to adjust the creative in there. You know what I'm saying, Casey?
John, if you look at the top campaign here, this 4-pack lob rolls, you can see actually the exact opposite effect. It's bringing people into the account, into this world really effectively, but it's not that closing type. So you kind of need a little bit of both, right? Like this is the Kobe. Close. One you described as the Shack. Together, they make beautiful harmony in your ad account.
Yeah, that one's lobbing it up. The other one's throwing it down. If you want to find out which of your campaigns are Kobe's, which ones are Shacks, and which ones you should just cut entirely, don't even give them a roster spot, go to wickedreports.com and click the Book a Demo button. All right, we're back. Jesse, we are here today with Mr. Jesse Pujji. Jesse, it is good to have you here, man. I'm excited to have you. You're one of my favorite edutainers out there on your podcast. One of my favorite, what do you call them? Business celebrities, business
tweeters.
One of my favorite tweeters out there to follow, to listen to. Give everyone the quick background on you. I mean, I'll give it the rundown. Founder of Gateway, founder of Kahani, founder of Amp Push, which you've now grown or sold, founder of Growth Assistant, lots of founders. And we're going to get into how you get it, how you actually do all of that. But yeah, I mean, sure. Everyone the background on you, if you want to give like the 60-second rundown.
Yeah, sure. So I'm born and raised in St. Louis, immigrant. My dad was an immigrant, came over from India when he was 17, and was always a small business entrepreneur. So kind of grew up with that in my DNA, had the DJing business in high school, had a t-shirt business in college. I spent probably about 4 years, 2 years doing like management consulting and then 2 years working on Wall Street. And in 2010, just was like, I want to go build something. And so left Wall Street. It was kind of the financial crisis time anyway. A bunch of friends and mentors said, you're good with numbers, data, go look at digital marketing. We were really keen on bootstrapping, and I'm happy to talk more about that. And so we wanted to pick something that we could kind of get off the ground ourselves and get going. And a long story short, which I can share the long story is we were right around the time Facebook ads was launching the first version of their ads platform. And so we were one of the first companies to really figure out how to make them work from a direct response perspective, and then eventually a data and a technology perspective. And our early customers were companies like Uber, Dollar Shave Club, Clash of Clans, Peloton, Blue Apron, Stitch Fix. I mean, you kind of name it. If it was like a big consumer unicorn, they were probably one of our clients. We grew that business. It's funny, I'm doing a lot now, but that's all I did for 10 years, for 10 years to the month. We grew it. We took an investment in it about 5 years into the journey. We ultimately, I stepped down as CEO after 10 years, moved back to St. Louis after 10 years in San Francisco. We then sold Ampush very recently, as I was kind of the chairman of the company. And, I had thought about my dream over time was like taking all the things I had learned and kind of doing entrepreneurship every day and coaching and teaching other leaders, and started to really think about a format like that would work for that. And that's kind of where Gateway X came from, which is what is, a venture studio, essentially. Venture studio meets holding company. But can we launch our own ideas, build the businesses and scale them, and then kind of build this amazing culture and organization that's like all about entrepreneurship. So that's sort of how the story all ties together.
Yeah, no, your stories, I've heard your story on like other pods as well. And I think it's pretty funny. Like not funny, it's interesting, but there are funny parts, like how, when you guys were getting started, you just did like this lead gen business and you're like, oh yeah, that you took like a $50K deposit, to generate leads for a company on an affiliate basis. and you had no idea.
It wasn't a deposit. It was they gave us an allocation. They're like, if you can get the leads, we'll pay for them.
Oh, got you.
And what
so
do
they
you
didn't
say in
give
the
you
early
money.
days? You just say yes to everything. And,
you say yes
we had
to money.
We had no idea what we were doing. We were just blowing ourselves up running search ads. We didn't understand quality score. We didn't understand landing pages. I mean, we knew nothing, right?
Yeah.
But not knowing something it can be a very huge advantage because you're willing to go learn it,
Right.
And so,
yeah.
But yeah, we made tons of mistakes. I mean, you name a mistake and we made it.
Right. Yeah. No, I like it. So before we get into this, I think that one of the I tweeted or I kind of DM'd you this week and I was like, hey, what do you think? What do you think would be fun to talk about? What's some stuff you haven't talked about yet? So we're gonna get into it, and a lot of it is like, what do we see the future happening over the next few years? So let's get into speculation mode a little bit. But before we do that, I want to play around a high-low buffalo.
All right,
I've heard you do on your podcast. High-low buffalo. Do you want to explain what high-low buffalo is?
Yeah, this is a game I play with my kids when we eat dinner together, multiple times during the week. High is just something good thing that happened in your day or, the last few days. A low is something low. And a buffalo is just something random or weird that took place.
Nice. Okay. I'll go first. High. I don't know what my buffalo is going to be, though. That's all right. I'll figure it out on the fly. So I'll start with my low because I definitely know that off the top of my head. My low was I play in like basketball leagues, like men like grown up leagues. And like I'm not a particularly good basketball player. I'm a pretty average player, but I know a lot of really good players. So we rarely lose, right? I said all that about me not being good because I was prefacing it to say we don't lose very much. Like we'll go whole league seasons undefeated and win, and that's pretty common. And we lost both games this week. Like we were 0-2 on the week, which was crazy. Like one of the guys I play with, like he loses even less than I do. But yeah, I mean, so that was my teacher shot instead of this week.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. A little technical difficulty on my mic. High for this week was I just got back. We're working on a deal for this podcast and potentially our sports podcast as well, on a potentially big deal. I don't want to reveal too much about it yet, not because I'm not supposed to, but because I don't know. You ever do that thing where you're like, I just don't want to jinx it, like I don't want to.
Yeah.
Sure. Something about it and then have it not go through or whatever. So I won't say too much about it yet, but we're working on something potentially really exciting for our kind of group of podcasts. And then Buffalo. Buffalo is just something random.
Weird, random, unexpected.
Got you. Okay, so Buffalo. Buffalo was that we got we might have got I'm unclear on this. There, just switch my mic back. Sorry. My Buffalo is that we may have got a new puppy.
That's a good one.
I am unsure whether we got it, which you'd think like, hey, it seems like you should know whether you got a new puppy or not, right? But not in my house. My wife just brings home dogs sometimes.
She lets you live the buffalo life.
There's very regular buffaloes.
If you do get a new puppy, you're gonna have to name it Buffalo. You realize that?
Oh, that's a good idea. I should send her this when we're done.
Or high-low.
Yeah, high-low.
You choose high-low or Buffalo.
I like Buffalo. It'll be like a mini Aussie.
It's a fun word to say.
Yeah, I like the name Buffalo for a mini Aussie doodle. Casey, you want to go? Are you just busy over there?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Okay, so I think I understand the game here. Hi, let's say, hi. I'm a friend from high school is in town, so gonna get to see that dude. That's kind of cool. First time in a minute. So yeah, excited for that. That's my high. My low. Luckily nothing too devastating. I'm gonna go with a good old fashioned. My dog pooped on the floor today.
That's not too bad at all. No,
that's fine.
That's like a normal thing. That's a multi-time daily low.
Yeah, I squeezed it into the low spot. I don't know all the rules about this game, but that feels like it fits still. And Buffalo. Okay, I got excited. I'm excited, but I got invited to play a round of golf on Sunday today, and I haven't played golf in about 15 years. not like a serious, like full 18. So I think that fits as a wild card too. No idea what's going to happen.
Good luck. That
Thanks.
sounds interesting. All right, I'll go. So my high is one of my business partners, the CEO of Growth Assistant, Adrian, who's actually been one of my best friends since 7th grade. She just closed on a house in St. Louis and is actually moving back to St. Louis. And her and I came to the office together today, and I was like, I was excited. As I've gotten this new stuff going, it's been, kind of a distributed team structure with a few people more, St. Louis being kind of the majority, and just felt cool to like be around people and be building again. So that was my high. My low is, Kahani, the business where I'm spending most of my time right now. It'll be fun to talk about it a little bit, but like, we're trying to figure out, we're in kind of that confusion state of startups where we're like, we think we have something big here. We're not exactly sure how it's going to become huge. There's lots of positive signals, but there's negative things, and we're trying to sort through that. And it's just, I think the team's getting a little bummed, and that's kind of a low. And then the Buffalo is, it was my daughter's 6th birthday yesterday, which is a Buffalo in and of itself, just an exciting time. It's her golden birthday. It was April 6th. Mm-hmm. But we took them out to my son and her and my wife to dinner, and they just learned what photobombing is. And so every time we try to take a picture, the other, they'd be like, photobomb, and they would jump in, and they could not stop laughing. And that like uncontrollable child laughter where, and to the point where my wife and I were like, stop doing that. And then we both just started laughing too, because we were like, this is hilarious.
It's hilarious how hilarious they think it is. Like
they think it's hilarious. And then my son was like, can you Google photobombing examples so I can see what like, and so I did it. And actually it's kind of hilarious to see there's a library on the internet of people photobombing.
No, he's like, so I can just come up with ideas of ways
to
photobomb better.
100%.
I like the initiative. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm just, trying to brainstorm here.
Totally.
Yeah. Oh no, that's fun. How old is your son?
My son will be 8 in June.
Okay, so he's older. Yeah. So my kids are. I also have a 6-year-old daughter. But yeah, like at that age, it's just the laughter is just, and it could be the same joke over and over. Like lots of times, and they'll think it's funny every single time. Yeah. So okay, so I want to get into it a little bit. I have a few questions for you. That I want to start out with. So right now, what businesses, like, let's just be, because you've done Ampush in the past, but I think it's pretty clear you've sold Ampush and you're no longer involved in Ampush, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then Gateway, it's still in early stage. Like, are you actually like involved with Gateway? Are you working on Gateway with like somebody else who's mainly doing the executing, or what's happening?
Yeah. So Gateway X is kind of a venture studio holding company, sort of an umbrella for all of my ventures. That's kind of how I think about it.
Okay.
And so it technically doesn't have any employees right now. But it owns a part of each company that I start.
I see.
And I own it, obviously, right? So I basically own each set of companies. And, the vision for it, like, let's say the 10-year vision is there's, I don't know, 5 to 15 companies, maybe more than that, but probably not too many more.
Right. They're
all sort of operating under a sort of unique culture that's the Jesse culture, right or wrong, kind of the way I believe you should build businesses. They all are, they could be any kind of capitalization, I think. Like, they could be venture backed, they might be bootstrapped, but they're all businesses that have had their own version of success. They don't have to fit like one. They don't all have to be venture outcomes. They could be profitable cash flow businesses, and other ones could be venture outcomes. So sort of agnostic, but capital light generally. Like, we're not trying to start businesses that take $100 million to prove out if they can work or not. And then the third thing is they all leverage my unfair advantage in some way. And I think of those as sort of my knowledge base, as my expertise as an area, like, which tend to be really two things: either customer acquisition, which I did for 10 years and know it extremely well and did it for the best businesses and brands, or solving problems that brands and marketers have, which is also something I spent a lot of time doing, and selling things into brands and marketers. And so, we've launched 3 so far. We're going to launch a 4th pretty shortly here, which I'm happy to talk about. And yeah, we'll see, and I'm sort of, we'll see how it all kind of plays out, but I'm sort of playing the free safety across all of them while we have leaders running them, but that unique culture built in. So that's kind of what the vision is for Gateway X. And one of the moments of the vision will be a young person who says, I want to be an entrepreneur one day, instead of joining McKinsey or Goldman Sachs, says, I'm going to go join Gateway X because that place is going to teach me how to be an entrepreneur and a founder.
Right.
And that's what we're the best of the world at teaching people how to do. And I'm like as excited about the culture in the organization as I am about any business or about making a dollar.
So do you, are you the acting CEO? So that's Gateway X. And then you've got Growth Assistant and Kahani. Are you the acting CEO, like a president? Are you involved in ops on Kahani or Growth Assistant, or are you kind of like just free safety across all of these companies?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm the chairman of Growth Assistant and the chairman of Unblowed, or Unco is actually the bigger name for it, which is a D2C brand we launched about a year ago.
Ooh,
I
didn't even know about that one. Yeah,
I know. I got all kinds of surprises. And then Kahani, I'm the CEO. So that's kind of what my plate looks like.
Okay. That's a lot to unpack. And so I think the first thing I want to unpack is how like you just told me you have a wife, you have 2 kids, and you have what does your day look like? To me, okay, so and I'll level with you because maybe this will just turn into a therapy session. And I feel like maybe a lot of high achieving people are like this. You know, if this is you and you're listening to the Twitter space or whatever, hop into the chat and ask your questions, because I honestly want to know how. Like, I've heard things like already in this interview, you've said, oh, this is a game I play with my kids over dinner. I'm like, you're like doing dinner every night, like when you've got this many companies, and maybe I'm just like not as good of a parent, right? Like, and that totally could be it. I've met other people before that I'm like, I'm going to just level with you. You're like a better dad than I am. Right. Like, but like, you know, like how are you doing all this? Like, what does your day look like? I'm guessing really busy, but like, is it controlled chaos? Is it chaos? Is this something that you're like, oh yeah, I give this a lot of intentionality, or is this something you do struggle with?
Yes, I think is the answer to all your questions.
Okay.
You know, I don't think it's one or the other. I can tell you the details. Like, you know, here's my daily schedule, my weekly schedule.
Are you going to, okay.
I'll just tell it to you. I mean, you want to know,
good.
right?
That's pretty good.
Okay,
yeah.
So I wake up probably between 7 and 8 a.m. most days. On Monday, let's say. Monday, I'll get ready. I have a short routine. Maybe I'll meditate or stretch or something. Get ready, go in. I'm usually working or at my desk or somewhere by about 9 o'clock.
Okay.
I'm pretty intense from 9 to 6. Like, it's hard to get a minute with me for myself or anybody, which is not ideal. I'm trying to change that as we speak, which we can talk about.
Well, to give you an idea, I think with your assistant or somebody, we decided to do this podcast, I want to say in January. And this is when it's been rescheduled to multiple times, right? So she's probably just taking care of that for you. But yeah, like it is.
Yeah, totally. And so, yeah, exactly. And so I'm like 9 to 6 on Mondays. I'm home by 6:15, 6:30. We do family dinner. I do bedtime with my kids on Mondays. Tuesdays in the mornings, I'm usually in a little bit later because I take my kids to school in the morning. And then I have Tuesdays and Thursdays are my late nights. So I can do business dinners those nights. I play tennis those nights pretty often. But those are the nights where I'm not going to get home. Like, I'm not going to see anyone at home. And that kind of gives me a little bit of freedom to have nights where I'm going to be late and like, I'm just not going to be there and everyone knows. Yeah. And then Wednesday looks a lot like Monday. Thursday looks a lot like Tuesday. And then Fridays, I try to cut out, around 5 o'clock. And so, I'll get back online after my wife sleeps, usually every night at about 10 o'clock or 10:30. Mm-hmm. And I'll at least knock out email or one thing that I have to get done. And then I'm probably sleeping around midnight. And then Sundays, I usually work for about 5 or 6 hours, just kind of usually planning, prepping, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what my calendar looks like. And it is busy during the week. I'm actually trying to cut that down. Depending on what I'm doing, that's another thing we can talk about. Like, I'm in the process of overhauling a lot part of that time what I spend on. But depending on what zone I'm in, like or right now for Kahani, for example, we're trying to really crack the nut on product market fit. And it turns out I just can't be scheduled all the time and make that work. Because when I'm scheduled all the time, I'm reacting to things other people are doing. Right. I'm editing their work. I'm checking in on things. That's not how you crack a product. You crack a product by sitting in a room going, this is the thing we should go build. Let's go build it. And so right now I'm actually trying to rip my mornings so that nobody can book anything in my mornings for the next 6 months. I guess I'm very intentional is like to answer your question.
I've heard you,
but yeah, there's a lot going on.
I've heard you say you're an Enneagram 7. Do you know your Myers-Briggs type? So the reason I ask is because I have mixed feelings on the Enneagram. Like anytime I take an Enneagram test, it's like, you might be a 2 or a 5 or a 7 or a 9 or a 6. I'm like, that's most the numbers. Like, you said more than half the numbers. I can't be that many.
I'm an ENTP.
I'm an ENTP as well. I was just going to say, you have the very ENTP vibe. All right. So sorry, a little sidetrack. So what you just said basically was like, okay, you're pretty 9 to 5, maybe 9 to 7. What did you say? Monday, Wednesday looks like home around.
Tuesday, Thursdays, I'm more like 9 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm getting on. Yeah.
Do you sleep 7-8 hours a night?
Probably. I can look at my Fitbit, but 7-ish.
Jeez, you're doing so. Okay, well, how do you get it all done, right? And I think that you called out a good point that like sometimes some things require that you just go down the rabbit hole. You know what I mean? Right. And especially cracking a product or cracking acquisition or something like that, like cracking like any type of marketing sales campaign.
Sure.
I feel like sometimes when I crack that kind of stuff, it's like 11:30 at night or midnight,
right,
when I'm just like, not necessarily free of distractions, but like, I don't know, I just thought of something a minute ago and then I just came to my computer and started messing around and started like went down the rabbit hole looking at different numbers or whatever, and then that gave me another idea or that brought another piece of the puzzle. And it's just like, you just got to kind of follow down the rabbit hole a little bit sometimes to do certain job functions. So I mean, it sounds like your zone of genius is really acquisition and, well, actually, I don't know, maybe it's leadership, maybe it's just everything, but
no, it's definitely not everything. I mean, I think product is not an area that I'm super strong in necessarily. Like I'm not very detail oriented. Like I could tell you all the things that I'm either developing on or I've made a baseline. I think maybe the question, John, you're asking is like, how have I been able to kind of do this? It's been maybe two years roughly since all this got underway. I think there's a bunch of interesting parts to it. I think one is I have a high tolerance for mistakes and screw ups.
Okay.
And if you're going to do a lot of this stuff like this, you're going to run this hard, a lot of stuff is going to break. And if you're a perfectionist, or you have every time something, you don't want things to break, you're constantly trying to not, it's like if I'm holding a very delicate vase and I'm running across the room, I got to realize that that's going to break it more often than me walking very slowly and holding it very carefully. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm just very comfortable. And then I'll what I also good at is I'm like, just like I play tennis, I might lose. I usually lose the first 2 out of 3 games I play someone before a set, and then I'll win the set very often. And it's because I'm like, oh shit, okay, this guy he's really good at hitting my back. Like I'm very good at adjusting though. And so that's a hallmark for how I build business, is that I'm just like, a lot of people are afraid to go make the mistakes, or they're afraid to jump into things. I'm like, let's go jump in a bunch of stuff. Oh, that's not working. Let's stop that. So that's a really important sort of part of the way that I run things and lead things. The second one, which maybe is the first one, is like, I surround myself with very, 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 very good, strong people, and I empower them and I delegate them. And, it's none of this would work without a lot of trust between a lot of people and a lot of, communication. The third thing is like, I have even though I'm an ENTP or a type 7, I also went to Wharton and grew up at Wall Street. Like I have a very healthy respect for numbers, data, structure. Yeah. I'm not the one you want to necessarily be the guy, structure, clipboard carrying guy, but I really appreciate and respect the clipboard carriers. And I respect, it's funny, I tell people on my team, the ones who I'm like, hey, you can ping me if I'm behind, and I'm okay with that. Like, it's actually my love language for someone to go, hey, you need to get this done. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I will go get it done. So everything gets run by numbers, data. I'm, empower those who have the numbers and the data. And so, those are three thoughts. I'm sure there's other things, but those are definitely 3 of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, really what I'm trying to get into is like, I don't feel like I could get everything done that I'm trying to get done in a day with that kind of schedule. And specifically,
I don't feel like I could do everything I need to do in order to achieve what I'm trying to achieve with that kind of schedule.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like the more important.
What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, that's like the more important thing, right? And but I think a lot of it has to do as I'm listening to you, I'm trying to achieve a certain thing, right?
Okay.
Like what we're really trying to grow is our media companies, right? Our
Right.
podcasts and stuff like that. We have another podcast that's a sports podcast. That one might even actually be a little bigger and higher potential than Modern Commerce. That's what I'm really trying to achieve. But also, I got to keep the lights on. I got to pay the bills. And like we're bootstrapping. And so maybe we get into the bootstrapping conversation, because one of the things I just heard from you is that a lot of this has to do with the people. And like, you know, with where you're describing where you're at with Kahani right now, there's got to be some source of funding, I'm guessing, in order for you to have the team to be able to take everything. And like, basically, I think I'm saying that I'm probably understaffed and I'm doing the job of a lot of people, which I think is a common solopreneur, maybe even entrepreneur problem, especially for bootstrappers. And that's probably like really what it is. And that, so if you're going to sit across companies like you are, it probably doesn't, it's probably not going to be great for your outside relationships if you're not able to like put some kind of team on the field, you know?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other thing I always spend a lot of time, and we could do this with you, John, is like most of the time when I'm meeting with Adrian or Carolyn, who runs the brand, most of the time I'm looking at a list of 10 things and I'm chopping 9 of them off for them.
What do you mean?
I'm saying, you know, Carolyn and I walked through all the stuff for a D2C brand today. We talked about how to think about inventory. There's return rates. Should we focus on getting our one-time purchasers to purchase the 3-pack? You know, and we talked about Facebook creative, and we literally just sat there and I said
nitty-gritty things. Okay.
And I kind of said, yeah, I see how you could get totally spread across this. And we went through and I said, let's talk about ROAS. Let's talk about margins. What's the one, you can only do one thing next week. What are you going to do to actually improve that? And the answer became like, develop 5 to 7 ad creative for Facebook that you think are going to get a better, like based on all the things you've learned, and double and triple down there. And that was the end of the, and you know, the meeting, she goes, wow, thank you. Like I have clear, like, because I think most of us, we really struggle with not prioritizing and not actually saying no to a lot of different things. And I think most businesses, especially early on, there's this whole thing of compounding and stuff, which I agree with after a business is at a certain place. But early on, I think businesses really, they win on one thing. The amount of D2C brands I've seen that basically were $25 million companies and Facebook was their only channel and 80% of Facebook was one creative. I don't have enough fingers and toes. And the reason is, but that's actually, there's a really good lesson there, right? Which is they got the right things right. They got the one thing right that mattered to actually scale their business up. And I think most of the entrepreneurs who don't go anywhere are getting 5 things okay instead of one thing really, really right. So one way that I also do this is I try my best to like triage that stuff and not spend a lot of time on the things that, like, here's a silly example for Growth Assistant.
Yeah.
Adrian she's a type 6 on the Enneagram, and her and I are fun complements. She's a warrior. She thinks about everything that could go wrong. She's constantly, you know, which also makes her great at talent business, right? Which is part of the unfair advantage. We have such great talent at Growth Assistant. But in the first like few months, she was like, shouldn't we figure out if this is legal? Shouldn't we figure out if we need insurance? Shouldn't we? And I was like, nope, we don't need to figure any of that stuff out. Let's not figure any of it out until we're doing 2 million in revenue or something, because
let's figure out if we have product market fit first.
Yeah. Or what? Like, yeah. But I think that stuff happens in big and small ways. Like with Carolyn and I, we found out, I was like, what's in your best, wildest dreams, if you reactivate a bunch of one-time purchasers, what's your incremental revenue going to be from that? And we calculated that it was like 10% of what one Facebook champion would be if we figured that out, right? And so it's just constantly looking at the business through that lens of ICE, which is like impact, confidence, ease, and cutting off a bunch of stuff and saying everything that doesn't make the top 2 or 3, we're not going to do.
Yeah, we use the ICE model a lot. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself as a husband and a father?
Ooh, that's a great question. I want to ask my wife this, my kids. I'd probably say 8 out of 10 on father and good. 7 out of 10 on wife.
The kids get a little more, huh?
Yeah, I think. Well,
I think that's pretty natural.
They've known me for less time.
Right. Yeah. There's a little more grace with the wife.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think.
Well, you're still 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 is still pretty good, probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, solid.
I think one thing I practice a lot, and I'm not perfect, but I've gotten a lot better over the years, is in the moment being present. And it turns out you can actually have a pretty hectic day and schedule and meetings. And, I do 2 date nights a week with my wife.
That's really good.
Wednesdays and Saturdays. We have
You just have a babysitter comes, or
we have an au pair who lives with us, right? Which is a great game-changing thing, which I recommend if you have the space.
Yeah.
And so we have that built into the calendar. And it's like, yeah, look, if I can go to dinner with her for 2 hours twice a week, and my phone is like either in my pocket or in the car, because I just don't want it,
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, okay, like, let's actually catch up. How are you? How's the, and then that's like might be all you need,
It's pretty good. So next question, is there anything in your life that you rate yourself a 10 out of 10 in effort? Meaning, I know I'm doing everything I can for that thing, and not like everything you can, not like everything that's realistic, but everything you should be doing. Does that make sense? Right. I'll give you an example. Fitness and health is always a good example, usually for grown people, of this, where it's like, yeah, I work out, probably not as much as I should. I eat healthy, probably not as good as I should be. Is there anything in your life that you're like, I do everything for this thing?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just a personal thing, like we're never satisfied, or that for me,
yeah. But I think I would give myself high marks on lots of 7 or 8s that in aggregate get close to a 10 in terms of life.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, I'm giving CB effort on a lot of things. Right. And
yeah. But even in life, that might be the right thing to do. I like the whole prioritization thing. I think it falls into every aspect of, there's a season to prioritize certain things. And I think when people screw that up, I read this book recently called Die with Zero After the Ambush Exit. Mm-hmm. And like, someone recommended, hey, this post exit is a great book, like what are you going to do with what you've gotten and your big winnings. And a lot of what he talks about is, the Die with Zero is a bit provocative, but a lot of what he talks about is doing the right stuff in your life at the right time.
Right.
Like, don't wait to, till you're 65 and you have bad knees to try to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. Even if you're not quite in the right financial situation, like, go when you're 45, because you can actually do it and be healthy. And like, yeah, I think a classic example, you have young children, so do I. Like, I think they deserve our priority right now. And like, there's going to be a time they're going to be gone. I can go hard when I'm 50. Like, I have no, when I turn 50 and they're in college and living their own lives, like, sure, maybe I'll work as hard as I did in my 20s during that time.
Even still, I mean, your oldest is 8, 5, 6 years from now, we'll go 8 years from now for your youngest to get to that age too. They're not even going to like want you to go as hard. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to want to be doing their own thing more often. Right? So they're only little for a small amount of time. I think that all the time. And then I never execute on that thought. Just talking about all of our guilts, right? Or at least mine. I do want to shift gears here to the reason people are here, and stop using this as a John therapy session. And do a little bit of future casting and where you see just generally business entrepreneurship going over the next few years. And I want to start it in a little bit maybe surprising or different kind of place. And that specifically is like the creator economy. So within our world of modern commerce, what's kind of crazy is I started this thing as like a really a D2C and marketing podcast. And we have a surprising amount of like creators who listen, right? Who've reached out to me and been like, oh yeah, like I'm a creator. And they might not be big, right? But like, that's what they're trying to be. And they're like, I'm just trying to understand this world better, right? And you guys say all these, and they'll like ask me things like, oh, you said like MER, like, what does that mean? Like, I'm, oh, wow. Like, I just never really thought of that. So sorry, I kind of sidetracked there, but I have some specific thoughts and ideas around where I think we're sort of going, with the creator economy. You are a person who's very intentional about your time. And that's maybe all of that was to establish you're very intentional about your time. You're very like good at saying no, right? You're intentional about what you say no to. Maybe
I don't think I am, funny enough, but yeah.
It's something you're aware of. You're not just you meet some people and it's like, hey, like, have you heard of no? Like, maybe you should think about that a little bit. Something you're aware of. But yeah, you do make an effort to grow a personal brand somewhere, right? Like you're pretty active on Twitter. You've got a pretty big personal brand there. You do the podcast, and one could say like those don't have like a direct serving of your core business models, or maybe they do, but like, yeah, I guess that's my question is like, why is it that you do that? And do you think that that actually has to do with like your opinions on where we're going sort of with creator economy? What V2 or V3 of the creator economy is?
Yeah. I don't think in my case, well, I'll talk about why I do it. I think there's kind of the spiritual side and the commercial side. I always split it up, right? Like I spend a lot of time spiritually thinking about what my purpose is and sort of my gift to the world. And I think I love helping other people learn and grow and be the best versions of themselves. And I think entrepreneurship and business is similar to running a marathon or competing in the Olympics. It's a really hard thing to do, and it lends itself to a lot of personal growth, reflection. And so to me, those two things come together. If I can help other people learn and grow through entrepreneurship, like I'm all about that. And that's how I think spiritually, or the energy behind Twitter or the podcast is like, I'm talking about something that I feel purpose and passion behind. And it's example of something that doesn't feel like work for me. So that's the spiritual side. The commercial side is like, someone's like, hey, Jesse, you're pretty good with words. You know, you were I did a lot of public speaking in high school and stuff. And you're good at explaining things, and you're passionate about this subject matter. Like, you could probably use that to grow businesses. And the three things I'd say most prevalent are get leads for things, which Twitter's a huge source of leads for Growth Assistant Kahani. You can probably use it to get a lot of great talent, which I think half the talent that works for me came through those channels.
Okay.
Or certainly thought I was more legit after they saw those channels. And then the third thing is like any kind of interesting deals, whether me sourcing capital or me making investments. And so you've got these three very hard commercial things that public presence does. So that's sort of how I've thought about it. In terms of where the creator economy is going, I don't actually have strong perspectives on it. I think it's going to be much more interesting as a new type of job and labor category than it is necessarily for lots of people making lots of money. I think it's going to become a cool job for like 10,000 millions of people potentially.
I agree. I think and that is in my thought as well, that I think that companies are actually just going to start. I mean, you look at like the Barstool Sports model, where like they literally just hire people to be personalities, right? And that's not a new thing. TV's been doing that for years, right? Actors have been that for a long time, but it's just a different iteration of it. Whereas what it's been, I think what V1 of it was like grow your personal brand on whatever platform you want to grow your personal brand on, and then figure out how to monetize it somehow, right? Whether that is your own company or people paying you. And in D2C, I would say, like, very simply, in direct to consumer, it was very much like somebody grows a Instagram following or some kind of following, you pay them to post about your product. And like, that's kind of going by the wayside, where it's just the economics of that aren't working as much anymore. Either because creators, influencers want too much money, or they've inflated their following somehow, or something like that, right? But I do think that there's a whole world that we're going to step into that's maybe the V2 or V3 version, where instead of what was the D2C brand that you mentioned earlier?
On the one we started, Unbloat.
Yeah, Unbloat. You said.
Yeah.
So instead of maybe Unbloat doing pay for posts, like they might do something that's more like, oh, we're gonna make the influencer, we're gonna hire somebody to be a content creator. And I think that it's actually a little more aligned, either if you own the company, or if you're actually like, the whole point is to be this internal creator. I agree. I think it's going to be like an interesting job for a lot of people, a lot of digital natives, Gen Zers. That's what they have to look for.
I also think they're like a lot of things. There's a lot of people. It has to be something that you spiritually enjoy, or you get some sort of gratification out of. Otherwise, like, there's a lot of people who don't want to do it, and they're like beating themselves up, and so I have to write threads and I have to do this, and it's like, man, if you don't enjoy doing it, it's like anything, like any business, it's too hard, it's too involved, it takes a lot out of you. And so that's the other thing is like, I don't think it's for everyone. In fact, I don't think it's for most people.
I agree.
And I think that's like, it's too much. It's a little bit of a hype cycle in that, from my perspective.
Have you ever met somebody who is like really like had a really big like info, like somebody big in like a Ryan Dice or Frank Kern or like those kinds of people who've been really big in the info space? It's interesting. A lot of them are hesitant celebrities, right? Like they grew this personal brand and they ran ads for themselves and with themselves in them and stuff like that, so that they could really, what they were trying to do is just build a business and sell a course and stuff like that. And then people started seeing them in the grocery store and recognizing them, and seeing them out in the world and recognizing them, and they're like, I don't like that at all, right? Or like it got to this point where it's like, oh, my whole job is that I have to have a thought on everything all the time, and like I just don't want to, you know. So I agree. I think it actually, as much as I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's great, like you're going to get paid to be a creator, you know, if you believe my speculation, I think it's like, well, you know, be ready for the double-edged sword of that. I think it's one thing when you're kind of trying to do it and it's on the side of something that you're already doing and it's just a part of your day. But when it's like, that's your whole job and you got to create something. And I mean, we could get into some of the people I know on Twitter, like they'll have a tweet that doesn't do as much as they think it should do. And they're like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Like, is it the Twitter algorithm or do I just suck? You know, like, and it is, right? So it's like this very kind of roller coaster sort of thing. So yeah, I agree. I don't think that a lot of people are as built for it as maybe they think they are. It sounds like a really fun job, but I think you got to be built for it. Like anything.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of picks and shovels businesses too, sold to people, influencers. Like you already see these ads for like the one-stop influencer kit, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
And like
grow and monetize your following in 3 months. Yeah.
Insurance influencers, like, you know, like insurance products to them because they're not going to be full-time employees, they're quite business owners, et cetera, et cetera. Like, so I think there'll be a lot of that. I think you know, you already see it on Twitter and you see it in some of the Instagram things. Like trust is what kind of drives some of this stuff and makes it really important. And so,
yeah,
you know, if you're overly pimping out your brand, or even I've like tried to figure out the right balance between me just sharing content and things versus like plugging Growth Assistant. Like, you have to find that balance because there really is one. And so I think it's going to also be a power law. You're going to have 1% is the Kim Kardashians. You know, they can just launch billion-dollar companies. 10%, maybe I'm in or you're in. You know, like you can do certain things, and you have this really long tail of sort of like the micro.
Right. And their value is really just in the actual literal content that they could create that can be repurposed, you know, if there's any value at all. No, it reminds me a lot of, I was an athlete and I was like a distance runner. So that's what I ran in college. I was a All-American and I ran a little bit professionally afterwards. And it's like the most top heavy sport ever. Right. So the very best 3 in the country who make the Olympic team, they'll make quite a bit of money, and not like an NFL player kind of money, but like they might, like if you win an Olympic medal and you're an American distance runner, you might make $3, $4, $5 million in a year. Then there's me, who's probably, there were times I was like top 20 in my event in the country, and I made like $5,000 a year.
Right.
Just because there's just not that much interest. Right. And so that I think it's kind of the same thing when it's like, it could be a very top heavy thing. Or it could just be like people might like, I have a D2C brand I'm working with right now that they're like thinking about, well, why don't we just like hire someone there in Phoenix? Why don't we just hire some kid from ASU to just like come be our TikTok person all the time? Yeah. Right? Like just come walk around our warehouse and make TikToks. And I'm like, yeah, like what a weird job. You know what I mean? Like with like nobody about like that.
It reminds me, there's an entrepreneur named Russ Fraden who's like a friend, and when I was 25, I kept saying, we're just going to do this. We're just going to do this. And he told me just is the most dangerous 4-letter word in the entrepreneur's dictionary.
Right.
Because people say that and then they hire the kid and the kid shows up and doesn't actually know anything about the product, or, you know, and it's funny because everything takes cycles and management and attention. Nothing just kind of works, you know?
No. Just because they're 20 years old doesn't mean that they actually know how to effectively use TikTok and like grow it. Furthermore, effectively leverage it into something that's of any kind of business value, you know? Right. So I want to move on a little bit and ask I mean, you're looking at a venture studio with what you're doing with Gateway X. Is it a lot of stuff like Growth Assistant where you're like, I think with Growth Assistant, you're kind of doing that because you're like, I'm very bullish on this idea that like this kind of thing is helpful and will only become more helpful and useful and used it as like in the next iterations of what we're seeing with digital businesses, right? Or location independent businesses. I don't know what to call them. I feel like I'm doing like a gender thing here, like location independent.
No, I think they're just talent marketplace. I mean, you know, or there's an old school term of them, which is BPO, business process outsourcing.
Yeah.
And it hadn't touched marketing yet. I mean, you know, what I saw, we had built a captive version of this inside of Ampush, and I would get a lot of pings from the Ampush alumni. A lot of the Ampush alumni went to go work
real quick. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Explain what Growth Assistant is, so that
Sure. Yeah. So Growth Assistant goes to startups, brands, and agencies who have marketing teams and have marketing operations. And oftentimes, as anyone who's listening who's done any kind of marketing knows, there's a ton of operational, you know, manual work, for lack of a better word. You want to go reach out to influencers, you got to find a list of them, you got to ping 20 a day, you got to follow up. Like there's a lot of stuff
legwork.
that maybe a lot of legwork and a lot, you know, typically a junior coordinator might do. And, you know, what the thesis of the business is like that stuff, you know, can now be done in a post-COVID world way better by global talent and way cheaper by global talent. So, you know, we'll charge $2,500 to $3,500 a month for a full-time person who's embedded in the team. And they will do, you know, we have 3 different types. Typically we'll have like a campaign management type who will look at reporting data, help whoever's running the Facebook ads, upload the campaigns. Design or video editing is a very common role. And then any kind of like outreach, influencer orientation. So we started that business 2 years ago this month, or 2 years ago in February. And we have 250 people in the Philippines across 80 different clients here in the US and a few in Europe. And so it's grown like crazy. I mean, it's grown like a weed. And you know, the waves of outsourcing and offshoring, there was like engineering 25 years ago. Everyone realized, hey, there's people in India and Eastern Europe that can write code. Let's ship it out there. Then there was this customer service wave where people realized people in the Philippines, people in India, they can do customer service. And I think digital marketing is going to be part of the third wave of sort of global talent and offshoring and outsourcing. And so that's what Growth Assistant does. And you know, we discovered it really because we built a version of that inside of my first company. And again, I was saying our alumni a lot of them are running growth and marketing at brands. Yeah. And they would call me and go, is there anything that exists like that? Because I miss it. I used to use it when I was at Ampush all the time. And I'd say, you tell me. They'd say no. And I'm like, man, I should start that business at some point. And that's how it came to be.
Yeah. So specifically, I think what's helpful about it is it's like as someone who sits where I sit, where it's like, you know, I sort of do like some fractional CMO stuff, and like I was mentioning earlier, I do a lot of stuff to pay the bills that isn't part of the big vision, right? But like I sit across a few different e-commerce brands, and I really love doing that. But it's like I can't really get into the legwork of, you know, making 30 iterations of your ads and stuff like that.
Right. Exactly.
It's right. Like somebody who can be that assistant and who it's like, you don't have to explain to them. I'm like, oh, here's how you use Canva. And, you know, here's what an iteration is. And here's why we're doing that. So like kind of that sort of, I see it. Somebody explained it to me. Like, oh, I think it's like I don't think they were fully clear on the service, but this is how they explained it to me. And I was like, that's a great value prop. So idea for you if you haven't dialed this yet. Somebody explained it to me like, oh, I think it is a service where they provide assistance to like CMOs and VPs of marketing specifically, right? So it's like an EA, but for specifically those executives. Right. And I was like, that's a great idea, because that's the biggest problem with an EA is that they like don't get half the stuff that I'm talking about, you know, and then I have to explain that to them. And I'm like, this isn't helpful. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good service. Anyway, but back to my original question, are you like, do you do a lot of speculating and future casting as you think about the businesses that you're getting into? Because I think Kahani as well, which is like, you know, if I'm going to give you, and this is, you're saying we're still trying to dial the value prop. It is essentially taking the video live shopping experience, sort of that people experience on TikTok, Instagram, things like that, and like integrating that more into your website and then making it like cooler tech with the idea that ultimately this will drive more conversions and probably more brand affinity. Do you do a lot of like, when you decide what ventures am I going to get involved with and grow and start, is it a lot of like speculating, future casting, this is the direction I think we're going? Or is it like much more practical than that? Or yeah, I mean, maybe walk me through your process on like how you decide what ideas you
I
want
could
to run
probably,
with.
I'm laughing and smiling because like I could probably stand to benefit from having a more structured and rigorous sort of like top down process. I tend to be a little bit, ENTP
I like
type
this
7,
idea.
yeah, kind of like a little bit, right? And I do think there's a mix. Again, you can see kind of across my brain, even the 3 businesses we started so far, and there's a 4th one. Like, Growth Assistant was a problem I understood really well. I saw a very clear gap in the market. I saw positive trends around marketing talent needs and global talent and COVID. And I was like, man, this makes a ton of sense. Like, and that was a pretty pragmatic idea. It's not a, it's, I mean, there are some good future of worky type parts of it, but it wasn't something I dreamed up.
Right.
Kahani is kind of the polar opposite. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
totally because it was somebody else's form factor, but I was like, I that was one of the moments where I was like, why is the site experience on mobile so crap? Why doesn't it look and feel more like mobile, like what we see?
Yeah. Why has it been the same for 10 years when devices have changed so much?
And also a little bit of the future casting where I was like, what's this going to look like in the future? This is going to look like the TikTok. It's not going to look like the old mobile web experience. Now, it turns out
I've had this random thing. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Please.
I've had this prediction for a long time that we're going to have like pretty soon at some point. So here's an idea for somebody, the product you could develop. We're going to have like mounted televisions that are on mounts that rotate, so that they can be either horizontal or vertical. Because like I think about all the videos I'm taking of my kids now, like are what used to be called home videos, right? But now they're these just like micro moments. They're all vertical. So I'm like, oh, anytime we want to go watch them, we're watching these vertical videos on our TV, and we're like casting to our TV with them. And I'm like, oh, why doesn't that thing just go like that? Like, and I've like had this idea for a long time. So anyway, I said all that because it triggered the idea when you were like, I think that this experience is going to look different at some point. This is going to click for somebody. So why can't it just click for me? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and it's funny because I have not pitched Kahani to a single customer who said, you're wrong, Jesse, that's a dumb idea.
Right.
Every single person has said, you're totally right. This is a no brainer.
I just don't want
to
be
so
first.
Obvious. Well, we have plenty of customers. We have, 20, 30 customers. But then they kind of go. Then I had this so funny. I showed this to the team recently. It was one of the customers. He actually also works the Growth Assistant, and he was like, "This is a no-brainer, Jesse. This is such a good idea." He went on for 5 minutes about how has no one else thought of this, and then I was like, I've been pinging him. I'm like, "Hey, let's get it going." He's like, "I got a lot going on my plate right now, man. I'm going to do it. Just give me a month. Just give me another month. We've got 2 other things that popped up, and so." What we're seeing and the challenge that we're running into there, which I think is common and one of the risks of future casting, is it's sort of the classic, it's a solution chasing a problem. There isn't, Growth Assistant solves a very acute problem. I need to reach out to influencers. I need to get reporting aggregated because I'm busy. Kahani is like this really cool thing that everybody loves. And yet, because it's not solving a specific problem for anybody, and where the people who have jumped on it have already in their minds, I want to take my social content, I've invested a lot in it, and I want it to live on my website. Yeah. And I think when people watch my social content, we have a great customer called Alley-Oop. They're a beauty site, meetallyoop.com. You can check out.
I was going to say basketball apparel, but that's all right.
Yeah, no, it won't change your mind, but it will change probably a woman's mind to see what the makeup's going to look like on them. And
right.
They when people watch their videos, their content on their site, their conversion rate skyrockets because their videos are so good at explaining the product and showing what it's going to look like. And so, we're kind of backing our way through a nifty idea into actual real problems, which are in this case, maybe it's conversion, maybe it's repurposing that content, but we have to go find real problems. And I think that's one of the big learnings we've had with that business and one of the dangers of future casting.
Yeah. The way that I always say it is, they already know the problem and they already know how to say it. Right. So a lot of people are aware that they're like, something's off. I don't know. We're just not connecting why this isn't working. Our conversion rate's low. I guess we could try this. I don't really know what it is, right? And then they might even hear ideas like, oh, we could implement this on your site or whatever. I don't know, just something's off. They know something's off. They know something's not connecting. Like, if it were me, I just wouldn't buy because I can't see it, right? They just don't know how to say the problem, right? So sometimes if they're that far and then you can clarify and say the problem, then it will help. But like, it's a lot easier to sell somebody something where I know what the problem is and I know how to say it. The problem is I need to reach out to more influencer. The problem is I need more traffic. And in order to do that, I need to reach out to more influencers. And you say, hey, we can help you reach out to more influencers. Like it's much easier to sell people something like that. And I think you run into this in direct to consumer a lot too, where like if you're selling this wallet, it's in my pocket. I'm not going to dig it out of my pocket. If you're selling a wallet, it's a cool wallet, Ridge wallet, for example, well-known one. What are you really selling? Well, you're selling status, but to say you're selling status feels contrived, right? It makes people feel like, well, I don't want to buy status. Like, I'm not trying to be all vain or whatever. Some people are just like, F it, I don't care. Right. And so it's like, you got to do it in this like weird roundabout way where you say, oh, what's the problem that they're thinking about, but they're not really saying, and how can we like meet them there? A lot of direct to consumer has this issue of like, they're not there are some products like this, but it's like most products that have kind of come up in this direct to consumer boom aren't a product where it's like, oh, you have back pain when you wake up in the morning. Here's a thing that makes back pain go away when you have back pain when you wake up in the morning, right? Totally. Like that's not how most of them are. And that's just the messaging so much easier when it is that. So yeah, it's an interesting problem to have. I don't know if I really had a point there. I don't know if I can help you, but yeah. So I remember my original question though. With what you're doing with Gateway X, are you really trying to like make these mostly ventures that you're starting, or are you trying to acquire ventures?
Yeah, I so far I don't have I haven't had the sort of excitement or energy to acquire anything. The way I've described it to friends is like if you told me about my dream house, I would never buy someone else's house and renovate it. Yeah. I would get the blueprint and I'd build it from scratch. And so I had a period of time where even investors were throwing money at me going, do a roll up, Jesse. Yeah. You're the guy, you can buy up these businesses. And I went and actually talked to, this is how I actually started Gateway X. My goals in Q1 of 2021 were like I launched my own D2C brand, but with my own hands and fingers just to figure out what that felt like and looked like. I went and met 50 companies that I could potentially acquire, including D2C brands, including SaaS businesses, including some services businesses. And I got Growth Assistant off the ground. That was kind of my first quarter what I was trying to figure out was what got me excited and gave me energy. And that's another cool thing about keeping myself pretty busy is that I can see where my energy naturally gravitates towards and honor it and be honest about it.
When I'm doing this and not less excited when I'm doing
and
this.
And I was more excited to chase down suppliers, for the e-com brand than I was to talk to the CEO of a $10 million revenue, $1 million EBITDA D2C brand. Yeah. I don't know why. That's kind of how I felt. And so, look, I think in 5 or 10 years, if the culture is built out and we're really good at, launching a bunch of growth marketing stuff, or we're really good at taking an expensive headcount business and putting offshore talent into it. And I think there's obvious M&A opportunities where we can be transformative to an acquisition. I would definitely consider it. Yeah. But I'm not, as it stands, I think I'm much more preferential to building businesses.
Gotcha. I appreciate you. So what I want to move into now is a little bit of a Q&A session. And this will only work if the people who are on Twitter Spaces will be interactive. So you could do one of two things. If you're on Twitter Spaces right now, there's a little comment icon thing in the bottom right. You can tap that and put your question into the comments and I can read them. Or you can request to join if you're brave enough to request to join. And then Casey, our backstage producer, he can just kind of hold the phone up to the mic and we can hear him. A little bit janky, but that's all right. That's how we do it. Or if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever, you can drop your comments there as well. While we're giving people a second to do that though, or drop your questions there. One question I have is, are there phases to starting a business, right? Like when you're launching something, are there phases to like its idea? Because I think I've heard you say I've got like 12 to 15 ideas I'm really excited about right now. So like, how does it jump from idea to we're going to try something. There's going to be something that goes, and then how does it go from there's going to be something that goes to I'm going to build a team and we're actually going to make a run at this, and it becomes something like a growth assistant or a Kahani.
Yeah. I can tell you how I did it, but I can tell you maybe how I would do it in the future. Like, I think that's interesting because I feel like I've learned,
not how I did it before. That's the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what we did before I was like, okay, we have an idea. Let's run as hard as we can to go sell it to someone. If we have an idea for a supplement, let's go get a landing page up. Let's turn on Facebook ads. It takes us a week and we're going to get signal. And I don't care. I'll learn as I go and I'll figure the idea out as I go, which generally has worked for me and still works for me. For Growth Assistant, I was like, call 10 of my former employees who are now running marketing at brands and let's see if they need some people in the Philippines. Let's go get them for them, right? Like every business, I could get it going that week. Honey, let's get it on a few sites, see if anyone engages with it. And I think I think that's great if you're like when I was 25 and I was like, I can go, I just need to get something going. And I think more often than not, that's the advice I would give anyone to do. I think in my shoes where I have I have a limited amount of time and resources, where I make my bets matters. I think next time I do it, I would probably just do a little bit more market validation than I've done. More learning about problems that customers potentially have, more engaging with actually like getting some qualitative feedback and perspective. I tend to be pretty skeptical of qualitative feedback because most of the time you're talking to someone, they're not going to tell you your baby's ugly. That's just not what they do. But if you try to sell them something, the way they behave is very instructive, whether or not you have something real or not. And so I think going forward, but I do think there's like certain things you pick up on, there's certain signals and clues. But I do think for anyone listening, like action is by far the most important thing you can do when you have an idea or something you want to run at. And I think too many people get stuck in the procrastination of entrepreneurship, which is like thinking about the idea, refining it, ideating it. Like that's more of a problem I see than my problem, which is I go too fast, too hard. And then I'm like, wait, what? Oh my God, how did I get here this fast? And like, I probably should have slowed down and thought a little bit more about this.
Yeah. So somebody did have a question here, but I wanted to say something about that because I was actually listening to an episode of your podcast, The Crazy Ones, which is definitely everybody should check that out. A little subtle plug there for you. And Alex, your co-host, who's the founder of Morning Brew, right? Yeah. Yep. I was like, you know what happened in my head? I was like, or was he the founder of The Hustle? No, that was Sam. So you guys had an episode where somebody asked, one of your listeners asked, how do you get your first B2B SaaS sale? And as I was listening to your guys' response, you guys were very tactical and nice about it. But my main thought was like, you already know the answer. You'd need to have a conversation with somebody who needs it, and then you need to sell it to them. When people are asking questions like that, to your point, like a lot of times people just are not like starting, they're not going. When people are asking questions like that, they're like doing this thing where they get the LLC set up and they get some things figured out and they listen to some podcasts, but they're not doing the main thing that they need to do because probably in most cases they're scared, to fail. They're scared if they actually try to do the idea that's been their kind of baby idea, their really good idea, their $1 million idea or $1 billion idea, and it doesn't work, and they fail, like they're just going to reflect on their self-worth, right? So I think that's kind of like the main issue people have is not running with it. But like for you, you have like the opposite problem where maybe you run with too many things at once, huh?
I think some vetting and validation would because I do have a unique like a skill that's kind of dangerous, which is I can convince most people of things and like
this is gonna work
and
classic ENTP. Just I can debate you right into believing me. Okay, so one person on Twitter asks, how do you see the situation in Italy right now with OpenAI? You familiar with that?
And no, I'm not in Italy.
So I believe somebody hop in and correct me if I'm wrong on Twitter. I believe that they have banned, Italy specifically has banned like some instances of OpenAI or banned the usage of OpenAI. So I think the overarching idea here is like government saying, no, we're not going to join this AI revolution because for whatever reason, I don't know the government side of it. They think it's dangerous or
I wouldn't. We're all monkeys, man. Like, when every new technology comes out, some group of people freak out about it. Uber came out. They did when computers first came out, the internet came out, people blocked the internet in countries. Governments are very conservative places that are very risk or management oriented, and they're gonna. So I don't know. I think it's silly. Like things that make life easier and technology solves most problems eventually become pretty dominant. There's not much you can do about it.
Right. I mean, we didn't stop the progress of the assembly line because it was going to put people out of jobs. It's a byproduct.
I'm sure someone did. I'm sure
Yeah.
Some government banned it and said
But
no.
yeah. But in the end, that's a government that either is now not a world power or eventually just adopted it, right? Or had all their production outsourced to another country. So just generally about AI, though, what are your thoughts here? Because I've thought about this a little bit, and I'm like, I don't mean to be this guy, but I'm like, the more I see what certain instances of artificial intelligence can do, the more I'm like, oh, like movies like Terminator and iRobot like weren't that wrong. Like that's totally possible.
I've been wanting ever since like all this OpenAI stuff. I've been wanting to like go rewatch T2 because it was like one of my favorite movies as a teenager or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's such a good movie. Yeah, look, I think it's a very real and game changing technology.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think this year is going to be the iPhone moment of 2007 when Steve Jobs and Bill. I fully believe it's got that kind of potential to spawn, let's say, $1 trillion of GDP or ecosystem.
Sometimes something comes along and changes the game.
I think it's there. That means it has to be handled with care. I do think there's things to think about how fast and how smart it could get. I think in the medium term, it's going to be something that really improves the output of most things, because I think most of the stuff it writes or generates as pictures is not like it's not sort of show ready.
Right.
It's not
no,
ready for
not right
time.
not right now, but maybe in 2-3 generations.
Yeah, maybe sooner than that, but like maybe in 10 or 15 years. But it will help everyone. Like if you've ever tried to write something or write ad copy, or like it immediately gets you drafts and lets you pick off things. So I think that's going to speed up humans and improve the end quality of everything we get out there, and help us probably think and be more clear with a lot of things we do.
Right. And just to be clear, I meant 2-3 generations of AI, right?
Gotcha.
Not human generations, not like 2 or 3 people from now. I mean, like in 2 or 3 iterations of it. Yeah, no. And so I guess I've tried this. I can't think of a job that AI couldn't just do. Like I can't think of a job that will still like need to be done by humans. But at the same time, I don't think we'll land in this fully like iRobot Terminator version of it. I think we'll land in more of a Star Wars version of it, where it's like, oh, you have these like fully functional droids, and there's sort of this droid human, not interrelation, but like there's this droid human relationship that where, they have really a lot of the same things humans do, and they're used functionally.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah. But we could obsolete ourselves if we wanted to, I bet. Jesse, it's been a good time. It's been fun talking. We're a little loose structured, not as segmented as the crazy ones. One of my favorite podcasts though. One of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. If you guys don't follow Jesse on Twitter, what is your handle?
JS Pujji.
JS Pujji. That's Pujji with 2 J's. Give him a follow and also listen to the crazy ones. And also if you are, plug all your stuff. Plug like Growth Assistant and Kahani. Give us the one plug.
Follow me, JS Pujji. I love to help entrepreneurs. Let's leave it at that.
Just do that. Start there. That's the top of the funnel, right?
There you go.
Cool. Well, Jesse, one thing we like to do here is a parting shot. I'll give you a second to think about it. But the parting shot is, we got almost an hour, 10 minutes of conversation here. If you take nothing else away from this, take this type of thing. This is like the soundbite, it's just to make it easy for us to clip so we know where to go.
Yeah, nothing is more important to entrepreneurship than prioritization. Figure out what matters and focus on that.
I love it. Short and sweet. I do parting shots and they're like a minute long, and it's like, that's not really the point. It's supposed to be a TLDR.
I was trying to demonstrate the point of focused in prioritization.
Yeah, hey,
Only a few
I see what you
sentences.
did there. All right, Jesse, thanks for coming on. If you are listening to us on an audio platform like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, something like that, please rate and review the podcast. It's very helpful to us. If you are listening to us live on Twitter, please follow Modern Commerce, follow Jesse, follow me, John J.H. Coyle. Those are the three hosts of this Twitter space. If you're following or if you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the bell, and subscribe and hit the bell. That's it. We'll see you next time.